I remember the first time I met my husband's parents. It was a chilly evening, and the air was thick with anticipation. My palms were sweaty, and my heart raced as we approached their grand residence. I had dressed meticulously, hoping to make a good impression. As we entered, his mother gave me a once-over, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "So, you're the one James has been talking about," she said, her tone devoid of warmth. His father offered a curt nod, barely acknowledging my presence. Dinner was a formal affair. The conversation was stilted, filled with subtle jabs and veiled criticisms. "Where did you say you studied again?" his mother inquired, a hint of condescension in her voice. I answered politely, trying to mask my discomfort. After dinner, as James and his father discussed business, his mother pulled me aside. "I hope you understand the kind of family you're marrying into. We have standards to uphold." Her words lingered, casting a shadow over the evening. Over the months, their disdain became more apparent. Family gatherings were exercises in endurance, with me constantly trying to prove my worth. James remained oblivious, often brushing off their behavior as mere quirks. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, I found myself alone in the living room. The lights were dim, and the house was eerily silent. Suddenly, I sensed a presence. Turning around, I saw James standing in the doorway, his face obscured by shadows. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. He stepped forward, the light revealing a conflicted expression. "We need to talk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart sank. I braced myself for what was to come, sensing that our lives were about to change irrevocably. James sat on the edge of the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly. I stayed quiet, letting the silence stretch, hoping he would speak first. And he did, though I wasn't prepared for what came out of his mouth. "They don't think you're the right one for me," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. "They think you're beneath us." The words sliced through the air like shards of glass. I froze. I wasn't surprised, not really. But hearing it from James, spoken so plainly, sent a sharp chill down my spine. "They've been saying things behind your back. Things I didn't agree with at first." He looked up, and that at first lodged itself in my gut like a knot of ice. I searched his eyes for reassurance, for something, anything, to hold on to. But what I found was doubt. Subtle, barely visible, but real. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice brittle. "Because last night, I heard them talking about asking me to reconsider the marriage." That did it. I stood up too fast, my head spinning. Reconsider? Like I was some contract they wanted to cancel? Some error in judgment that could be erased? "I can't believe this," I whispered. "I'm not saying I agree with them." James stood too. I'm stuck, okay? They're pressuring me." I stared at him, wondering how someone I loved so much could sound so unsure of me. And suddenly I started seeing it. The subtle things I had ignored. The lingering glances from his mother when I laughed too loudly. The tense silence from his father when I brought up my career dreams. The time his mother insisted I not wear such bold lipstick to a family brunch because it was too much. I'd brushed it all off, convincing myself they'd come around. But they never had. And now James, the one who promised to stand by me, was starting to wobble. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from one of them, or maybe even from James, saying he needed space. The paranoia clawed at me. I started questioning everything. Every conversation. Every smile. Every compliment that now felt laced with venom. In the days that followed, things got worse. James began spending more time at his parents' home, handling some family business, he claimed. Calls became shorter. He forgot to reply to messages. One day, I noticed a missed call from his mother at 1:42 a.m. When I asked him about it, he shrugged it off. She was just checking in. She couldn't sleep. I wanted to believe him, but my instincts told me something darker was going on. Then, I received a message. A strange, anonymous number. No name. Just one line. My fingers trembled as I read it. I felt my chest tighten. I showed it to James. That's probably someone messing around, he said too quickly. Don't overthink it. But I was overthinking. I had to, because something wasn't right. A few days later, I went to pick up dry cleaning and found out it had been canceled. When I got home, some of my makeup was missing. My favorite heels were gone. I checked my emails and found 2 appointments had been deleted from my calendar. One was for an interview I had been preparing for weeks. I confronted James. He denied everything. Said I was being dramatic. Said maybe I was misplacing things because I was stressed. But stress doesn't erase emails. Stress doesn't cancel appointments. My world was unraveling, thread by thread. And the most haunting part? I had no proof. No witnesses. Just gut feelings and small, eerie signs. At night, I started locking the bedroom door. I didn't know what, or who I was protecting myself from anymore. My home didn't feel like home. It felt like a stage, and I was the only one who didn't know the script. One night, as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, I caught sight of something behind me. Just a flash in the glass. I spun around. Nothing. But my heart wouldn't stop racing. That's when I realized someone was watching. Not metaphorically. Literally. My skin crawled. And the worst part? I didn't know if it was James or his parents, or someone else entirely. But I knew one thing. I wasn't imagining things. It happened on a Sunday. The kind of quiet, lazy morning that should have been peaceful, should have been filled with coffee and soft music. But I had already grown to expect the worst. James had gone out, supposedly to meet a friend from college. He left his laptop open on the dining table. Something he never did. He guarded that device like a second heart. I should have walked away. I should have respected his privacy. But that voice inside me, that cold, shaky voice that had grown louder each day, whispered, "Look." So I did. The laptop wasn't locked. His email tab was open. And at the top of the inbox, a subject line chilled me to my bones. I clicked it. My eyes scanned too quickly at first, not fully comprehending what I was seeing. But then I slowed down, and every word landed like a punch in my stomach. James, we've tolerated her long enough. She's not one of us. You know this. We've spent years building our name, and she's dragging it into the dirt with her dreams and big talk. She doesn't belong in our family. We agreed that once the position at the firm is secured, you'll file the annulment. The investors can't see weakness in your personal life. She'll get emotional, maybe even irrational, but that's the point. She'll make herself look unstable. We've already reached out to someone at her job. Expect them to start reviewing her performance soon. Finish this. Don't get soft.
Mom.
My hands shook so violently, I almost dropped the laptop. My chest burned. My ears buzzed with silence. They were plotting to destroy me, emotionally, socially, professionally. And James, my husband, was in on it. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like hours. The words blurred in my vision, replaying over and over. Suddenly, every strange moment clicked into place. The missing makeup, the canceled appointments, the strange text, the subtle coldness in James's eyes. It was all part of a sick, strategic dismantling. They weren't just trying to push me away. They wanted to erase me. When James walked in the door later, all I could do was stare at him. He kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. Hey, babe. I couldn't breathe. My throat felt like it was closing. James, I said, voice barely steady. Can we talk? Sure, he said, placing his keys down. I saw the email. His face went blank. Not shocked. Not guilty. Just blank. He stood silent for a few seconds too long. Then, softly, I told you not to go through my stuff. That's when I knew. He wasn't going to apologize. He wasn't going to explain. He wasn't even going to pretend to deny it. Instead, he sat down calmly, like he was discussing a minor scheduling conflict. This isn't personal, he said. Not personal? I wanted to scream.
Cry.
Break everything in the room. I married you, I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. I gave up so much for you, for us. How could this not be personal? He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. just stood there with that maddening calm. They think you're a liability, he said. And if I want to move forward with the firm, with my future, I can't be with someone who doesn't fit the mold. I was stunned into silence. My love, my marriage, it had all been a chess game. And I was the disposable pawn. That night, I packed a bag. Just one. No explanation, no begging. I didn't even take my phone. I couldn't trust anything in that house anymore. And before I left, I made sure to look him in the eye. You'll regret this, I said, my voice ice. Maybe not now. Maybe not tomorrow. But one day, when you're surrounded by people who only love you for your money and your name, you'll remember what real love looked like. And you'll know you threw it away. He didn't reply. I slammed the door. I spent the next few weeks in hiding. Not literally, but emotionally. I stayed with a friend. Didn't answer calls. Turned off all social media. I needed to breathe again. To feel safe again. To be again. And slowly, I began piecing myself back together. But it wasn't easy. Some days, I woke up screaming. Other days, I couldn't get out of bed. The betrayal had dug itself into my bones. I got a call from my employer 1 week later. They said they were reevaluating my position.
Just like the email said.
But this time, I was ready. I forwarded them screenshots of the email thread I had saved. I told them everything. They were horrified. The HR rep I spoke to said it was the most disgusting abuse of power they had seen in years. Within 2 days, my status was not only restored, they promoted me to a new department, completely disconnected from James's family's influence. It was a small win, but it was my win. I wasn't done yet. They thought I would break, that I'd hide, disappear, or fall apart quietly. But what they didn't realize was this. When someone tries to erase you, to silence your truth, there's a fire that rises. A divine power that stirs from within, an awakening that cannot be controlled. And once awakened, that version of you does not go back to sleep. It had been almost 2 months since I walked out of that house. 2 months of reflection, silence, recovery, and strategy. While they were busy spinning lies, I was gathering truth. Emails, screenshots, voice recordings, even witness statements from people who had overheard conversations or been indirectly pulled into their manipulation games. I kept everything. Neatly. Quietly. And then, I made my move. It started with a formal complaint. I submitted a legal notice to the board of the very firm James and his family were tied to. I exposed their intent to use marriage as a tool to manipulate image, wealth, and professional standing. I presented them with undeniable proof of psychological abuse and sabotage. The board responded faster than I expected. James was called in for an internal investigation. His face, when he found out I had flipped the game on him, must have been priceless. I wasn't in the room, but I heard from someone who was. They said he looked like he'd seen a ghost. They said he kept mumbling, "She wouldn't do this, she's too emotional for this."
But no.
I wasn't emotional anymore. I was precise, strategic, powerful, the very things they claimed I couldn't be. And then came the real confrontation. One afternoon, I got a message. It was his sister, Alina, the one who used to smile at me at family dinners while secretly texting her brother that I was too much. Her message? At first, I ignored it, but something in my heart nudged me. Go.
So I did.
We met in a quiet cafe, tucked away from the noise of the city. She looked nervous, but she spoke first. I wasn't part of the plan, she said. Not all of it. But I didn't stop it either. And for that, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I just listened. She continued. It was our mother. She's always been obsessed with image and control. She didn't like how free you were. You made her feel small, and she hated that. Then she leaned in. She's not done. She's planning something else. I narrowed my eyes. Like what? She's trying to sue you. For defamation. She's gathering statements from people she's bribed to say you faked the emails. I blinked.
Of course.
When abusers get exposed, they play the victim. But I wasn't afraid. Because truth always outlives lies. I left that meeting with a sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do next. I contacted my attorney and presented everything, including the new warning from Alina. She moved quickly, filed protective orders, sent cease and desist letters, froze any potential legal loopholes they could exploit. It was time to protect not just myself, but others too, because I wasn't the only one they had manipulated over the years. I started hearing from former girlfriends, distant relatives, even ex-employees. Each one had a story. Each one was silenced.
But not anymore.
With their permission, I compiled their experiences into a confidential portfolio, a dossier of real voices, real pain, and real strength. And then, I exposed everything. Not with drama, not with rage, but with purpose. I published an anonymous blog, backed by evidence, names redacted, but facts intact. It spread like wildfire. People in the firm started talking. Influential figures who had once sung James's praises began to back away. His family, once seen as untouchable, started losing credibility. Their world was crumbling. And then the moment arrived. I got a letter in the mail, a formal apology from the firm, a confirmation that James's position had been revoked. His family had been asked to step down from several honorary boards due to ethical inconsistencies. They were no longer the untouchable dynasty. They were a cautionary tale. And me? I was free. Not just legally, emotionally, spiritually, holistically. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I stood in front of my mirror one morning, not to criticize myself or rehearse fake smiles, but to simply see me. And I said it out loud. I'm proud of you. The woman staring back at me smiled. She wasn't broken. She wasn't bitter. She was reborn. The storm had passed, but the ground it left behind wasn't the same. It was scorched, stripped, purified. And strangely, that's exactly what I needed. You see, when you're dragged through the mud by people who wear smiles in public and knives in private, something inside you changes. Your vision sharpens. Your skin thickens. But most of all, your soul learns to hear the voice it had ignored for so long. The voice of truth. The voice of divine protection. Because while I thought I was alone in those sleepless nights, while I wept into my pillow, asking why love had turned into punishment, I was never truly abandoned. The angels were watching, and they had a plan all along. I remember one night, long before I found my strength, I cried out silently. And now I understand. They weren't winning. They were being watched. Everything they did in secret was being counted, measured. And they were about to receive the exact weight of the pain they caused. Karma wasn't delayed. It was precise. Months after the final confrontation, I began to rebuild. Not just my life, but my purpose. I opened a small emotional support circle for women who had faced covert abuse from in-laws or toxic spouses. A quiet space where their voices wouldn't be silenced. Where no one would say, just adjust, or don't talk back. And slowly, women began to show up. One by one, with heavy eyes and shaking hands. They came not just for healing, but for recognition. To know they weren't too sensitive. They weren't crazy. They were awake. And being awake is a gift. One evening, while locking up the space, I got a message. Unknown number. But the words chilled me to my core. I stared at the screen. And for a moment, I didn't know how to feel. Pity? Satisfaction? Relief? None of those quite fit. What I felt was closure. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with sirens and arrests. It comes quietly, elegantly. It comes when those who swore you'd never be good enough have to watch you become more than they ever imagined. Weeks later, I stood at the edge of a cliffside retreat during a healing weekend I had organized. The air was still. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Is this it? Is this the end of the pain?" And in that silence, I felt it. Wings. Not visible ones, but undeniable. The presence of angels. They didn't speak with words, but they placed something in my spirit. And that truth washed over me like light. If you're reading this now, maybe you felt like I did. Maybe they told you, too, that you'd never be enough, that you were too emotional, too wild, too complicated.
To you.
But I want you to hear me when I say this. Your worth is not up for negotiation. And your healing? It's your inheritance. Let them whisper. Let them crumble under the weight of their lies. You rise. Because even now, as you read these words, the angels are circling around you, shielding you, preparing your table. And when they lift the veil and reveal who you really are, even your enemies will have no choice but to say,